Gong.
You're all going to turn into pumpkins now.
Well, we've got another hour before then.
Or turn black.
Yeah.
Pumpkins.
Or become princes and princesses.
Your choice.
Yeah.
Good one.
Okay, we are live. Let me paste it everywhere. All right.
Okay.
There we go. Just one more minute and then I'll do the intro. Okay, they joined it.
Hello, David.
Hello again.
Hello.
I was just counting, brethren, about the pleasant, heartwarming experience in Istanbul.
We had good time.
Very good, very good. Okay, with your kind permission, let me mute everyone. And Brother Bob, would you kindly unmute yourself and let's start the lecture. There are other participants trying to join. I'll take care of them. So, Kamarjobat, that's hello in Georgian, and I would say merhaba. That's also Gamarjoba in Turkish. So, greetings from Istanbul, Turkey today, and welcome everyone to Saperiao Day 114. Today we will have the honor to have the opportunity to host again our beloved historian, Brother Robert Cooper. And today's lecture will deal with the preservation of Masonic records and something that is of very practical interest because we today discussed with our Turkish brothers that they have archive of 150 years old with 150 years old documents, and it is definitely very interesting to know how to preserve, what to preserve, how to physically, what kind of conditions should be out there set up for the documents to be preserved, and how to catalog them and stuff like that. So definitely the interest is there, and this recording may serve any interested person to kind of get a guide into the world of museums and libraries, Masonic ones. And we'll have the opportunity to, as I announced in Facebook groups, to have a master class from Brother Bob, who's been doing exactly that for 26 years now as the Grand Librarian, Grand Historian, and Grand Officer who takes care about this huge heritage Grand Lodge of Scotland has compiled together, and definitely the experience is out there. So I will briefly remind everyone our rules. We don't discuss politics, religion, and interjurisdictional issues. We are here as individuals. Our opinions are of individual nature, without representing any official standpoint of any institution. These lectures are public, they are recorded, and will be published on YouTube for anyone to download and enjoy it as much as they would want. And definitely, we allow male and female, Masons and non-Masons. Everyone is welcome who wants to learn more about the all the activities this brotherhood have been doing during centuries of its history, or is doing now, in its rituals, its philosophy, and how its brotherhood is represented in different parts of the world. And definitely this part, this masterclass, would be an interesting addition to the collection that we all together created under Sapere Aude. So once again, welcome. I just, for recording purposes, once again tell everyone that today, for personal reasons, I'm in Istanbul, Turkey, and those things are going okay. But I use the opportunity to accept kind invitation by Brother Renan, Brother Bora, and Brother Turan. And we enjoyed excellent fellowship with excellent dishes and tea. And we had very interesting, several hours long discussion of so many interesting issues about the fraternity. So once again, I would thank you so much, Brother Renan, for this opportunity and for all the gifts exchanged, let's say, from the sides. Uh, and actually, I will show once again the gift that the brother Renan had prepared for hundreds edition. So once again, sorry for a bit longer introduction. Brother Bob, floor is all yours, and we are listening to the masterclass, How to Preserve Masonic Documents.
Well, good evening, everyone. Well, good evening, my time. Hello, perhaps is probably a better greeting. Thanks for listening in. If there's any problems with you hearing me, let me know. Hopefully, David's already sussed that it's fine. This subject is not one of those sexy subjects like some of the other topics that we talk about. I mean, I know we all love the stuff about the esoteric and our symbolism and all this kind of stuff. But believe it or not, the preservation of our Masonic records is fundamental. Frankly, if we didn't preserve these things, then virtually every other subject that we're interested in, we simply couldn't discuss. So what we all love most about Freemasonry, nearly all stems from our records. No records, nothing to discuss. So preserving them is can be considered to be a kind of mundane subject, but it is, again, in my opinion, crucial. And what I'm going to do this evening is tell you a little bit about what we've done at the Grand Lodge of Scotland in order to preserve our records, and explain how really this is a never-ending task. And quite often, because it's never-ending, a lot of people find that very daunting and simply never start. And I can tell you now that although we have started, I'll probably never see the end of it. It's very unlikely I'll see the end of it. And of course, we keep producing stuff, don't we? We keep writing things, we keep recording things on Zoom and putting them on YouTube. So there's always something going on despite the pandemic. So there's lots of stuff about Freemasonry. Freemasonry doesn't stand still. So once again, what I've done is I've made a kind of PowerPoint presentation that I hope you'll be able to see. And if you can't, then we've got problems. But hopefully you can see on the screen, the title screen. You see that?
Yep, all shared.
okay.
Excellent.
Okay. So yes, so for those that are interested, that's the Grand Lodge of Scotland armorial bearings. It's what's granted to our Grand Lodge by the Lord Lions being our official coat of arms. So the digitization and restoration of Grand Lodge records. Now, I'm going to be talking about what I know personally from what I do here at Freemasons Hall. And obviously, the things that you're going to see may not be common to your part of the world, but the principles certainly are. I certainly hope they are anyway. So here you are. This is a registration book, a membership registration book. And you can see just handwritten on the spine, 1898 to 1900. So that is one book for 2 years, 2 years, 3 years, 2.5, 3 years worth of membership records. And as you can see, it's a bit tatty. It's been well used. It's bound in leather, and it has a very big, heavy strap across the middle so that it can be lifted. But this is a problem in today's day and age. Moving heavy objects like this is not usually a good idea. And when things like this become worn or damaged, it's a good idea to renovate them, and that gives you the opportunity to digitize them, in this case, to scan them. So what we've done is we've arranged to have these books disbound, as they say, literally taken to pieces because they have to be repaired. And when they're being repaired, they can be scanned on a flatbed scanner, page by page. And this book, although it is a bit tatty, is actually in a fairly good condition, considering it's well over 100 years old and is well used. And you can see it's well used by how well thumbed the index letters are on the right-hand side. So this is it just about to become taken apart to be digitized. Now, one of the problems that we have is that once you've got something that's completely flat, such as a document like this, there are all sorts of little wrinkles and defects that will show up when the document is being copied. Now, there are international standards laid down for how documents should be copied digitally. These standards mean that our records have got to be of that standard in order for them to be acceptable in the international community by institutions such as libraries and universities. So regardless of whether we think these standards are a bit of a pain in the backside or not, the fact is that these standards exist, and if we don't adhere to those standards, then the international world, the non-Masonic world, will not consider that we are very professional in the way we do things. And what you can see in this illustration is the extent that sometimes you have to go to. This guy is using a special iron, heated iron, to iron out some fairly severe creases in the paper before it's copied. So you can see the extent to which some documents have to be submitted to quite a lot of difficult work. And here is a professional flatbed scanner that scans sheet by sheet, and of course the ubiquitous computer so that the results can be checked And it's important, as I said, these international standards require certain levels of illumination, a certain minimal level of resolution. So you can't, unfortunately, some of our guys think just taking the camera they were given as a present 10 years ago, they can find that camera and go and photograph their records, and they've digitized their records. Unfortunately, it's not that simple, certainly not that simple anymore. As I say, you have to adhere to certain standards. So that's a flatbed scanner, and that is probably the most labor intensive, because not only is the book being taken to pieces and each page scanned individually, you have problems with other registration books and other documents that are not separated into individual sheets. That's just a close-up of the flatbed scanner. And it gives you an idea of the size of the sheet of paper and the number of entries on each page. Then, because the book has been taken to pieces and scanned, it's then rebound, and it's rebound in such a way to make it archivally stable. It will last forever. One of the processes is that the paper has all the acid removed from it. And so again, you can see this is very labor intensive. This guy's an expert bookbinder, and he's rebinding that book that you've just seen. So you can see the size of the book, the number of pages, the number of entries, and that poses a problem in its own right because it's handwritten. So this is not a database. This is not a database material. This is still handwritten. The difference is that once we get to the stage where it's been digitally copied, we no longer have to actually physically handle the book or the paper or whatever. And that's incredibly important, because one of the most damaging things to all books, regardless of whether it's a Dan Brown Da Vinci Code paperback or whether it's one of these precious records, is that as you handle it, the acids and other contaminants on your hand soak into the paper, and over the long term, this paper will be damaged just simply because they're being handled. So by copying them, repairing them, and putting them away means that you're also creating a permanent physical record, as well as hopefully a permanent electronic record. So again, that was just to show you the size of the book that we're looking at here. That's what it looks like when it has been finished. It's now been scanned. Every page has been scanned and cleaned, even using Photoshop where it is necessary. Now, the scans are rendered as PDF files. PDFs, because they are universally usable and acceptable, and that's one of the standards that the international community lay down as being necessary for archival documents. So although you can use other formats like JPEGs, TIFFs, or PNGs, or whatever, PDFs are the preferred format. But of course, you can convert PDFs into other formats later. So all is not lost if you want to actually make an image rather than a PDF. So let's, those people out there who love the statistics, the book that we've just been looking at is statistically, this is the size of the actual thing that we're using. And as you can see, it is a fairly substantial piece of archive material. Now, I strongly suspect that the Scots over 100 years ago thought if you bought a great big book, it would last a long time, and therefore it wouldn't cost so much money to have to buy a small book every now and again. So they bought these very large books. They were specially made for them. And as you can see, 22 kilograms is no mean lightweight item. And so it's very large, very cumbersome, and very difficult to handle, especially if you don't have any specialist equipment. And in today's day and age, with health and safety, it's not a good idea to be handling such large and heavy things on a daily basis. So by the mere process of digitizing it, scanning it, you're replacing the need to actually physically handle documents of this size and weight. So again, some more statistics for those of you who are interested in such stuff. You can see there's a lot of pages in each of these books and a lot of names in each one. And as you can see, there are a very large number of Scottish Freemasons that have been registered since our records begin. And of course, some of you will know that our written records begin in 1598. So we're coming up for well over 400 years of membership records that we've got to work out how to preserve. And that one book that you have seen, as I say, is only one book and only covers a couple of years. So that gives you some idea of the task that we have. And we began that task some years ago, and we are nowhere near the end of it yet. I think we're up to 1962, but oddly enough, the way the membership records run here in Scotland anyway, 1962, the number of names in these books starts to increase. So we're getting into one of the harder periods to digitize the records. A lot of the easier stuff has already been done. What happens, and this was just the way we decided to do this, was that once the book, typically the one that you've just seen, is then transferred onto DVD. This was simply because when we started this digitization project, DVDs were the way to go. It was the latest technology. It was the medium that would allow you to have, I can't recall how many megabytes per disc. And so we still continue to do it to this day on DVDs, but I hasten to add that what actually happens is that once the DVD arrives here, the data is transferred to a server and also copied to a backup server. But the original discs, and these are specialist archival DVD discs, these are retained in two different places. One I have access to, and one is outside of the building. So a little bit of kind of disaster management built in to everything we're doing. And that's simply because if you think about it, we are spending years and years on lots and lots of money for this to go up in smoke or get flooded or whatever and have it destroyed. It just doesn't bear thinking about. So we have to have some kind of backup disaster planning in place. So because it's a PDF, which is a PDF of handwritten documents, unfortunately, it's not searchable. That means that you cannot look up the name Bob Cooper because it's written by hand. The best we can do is we can index each of these books according to the lodge, and so we know where in the book the lodge is, and also we know the period that lodge records exist for in that book. The problem with this, and of course this is simply a consequence of the way the guys started recording this information way back when, they simply started recording it on a lodge by lodge basis. So, and if you say, I'm looking for Jock Campbell, who was a Mason somewhere in Scotland in the 18th century, we haven't got a hope of finding that guy for you, because it's simply not, unlike a database, it's not searchable. You can't interrogate handwritten records, but at least we're halfway there. We have this handwritten record that we can search lodge by lodge. So if we know, say you're looking for your great-grandfather, if we know your great-grandfather's name, where he lived, and hopefully some supporting information, such as his occupation, then we've got a reasonable chance of finding him in the records, provided, of course, he was actually a Freemason. If he's not a Freemason, no matter how hard we try, we're not going to find him. So he's got to have been initiated before there's any chance of us being able to get information for him. So the index works like this. It simply is an index of lodge by lodge, and then the page on which the lodge record begins. Why are these documents important? Well, we've said this before. There's all sorts of reasons why our records are important. Here, I'm more interested in why they're important to us. First of all, they are the basic building blocks of the history of Scottish Freemasonry. This is a human institution. It is people that make the organization, and without people, then the organization does not exist. So the information about the members is first and foremost paramount. Second, of course, is what they did, but you've got to know who they are first. So they tell us who we were. Who were the Freemasons of 400 years ago? Well, the records tell us that. They tell us the names. Unfortunately, more often than not, they don't tell us much more than that, but they give us a kind of idea as to the type of Scots people who wanted to be Freemasons. Because we know who they were, it also tells us who we are now, and we can see the change, if there is any change, from the past to the present. So we can track the development of, in this case, Scottish Freemasonry from 400 years ago to the present time. So who we were and who we are. Also, and this is a very much underused aspect of Masonic archives, because we can establish a pattern in the past of who we are or who we were, and now who we are, it can help us work out where we're going in the future. Unfortunately, as a resource, I don't think hardly any Grand Lodge makes good use of this kind of material to try and see into the future. When it comes to more practical uses, it can actually help, well, it does more than help, but it is the very basis of writing the history of a lodge, or a provincial Grand Lodge, or a district Grand Lodge, which are subdivisions of Scottish Freemasonry. So with the very basic building blocks, we know who the people are. Then that means we can find out who they were within the community, and then we can build a lodge history which is much rounder than it would be than just a simple list of names. And of course, the one thing that it's used for a great deal is that it's used for genealogical research. Lots and lots and lots of people are in touch with us on a daily basis, trying to establish if any of their ancestors were Freemasons. And of course, that gives them a kind of continuity of Freemasonry in the family. But I also know that the Order of the Eastern Star for the ladies require some kind of actual Masonic connection through family before they can become members. So it's important for people who want to become members of the Eastern Star to be able to find a Freemason who was an ancestor. And then it comes to one of the kind of pet conundrums of mine. It can be, this material can and is used for a variety of academic projects. In this case, it means that we can track Scots across the world. When Scots have travelled, they've formed a lodge. And so because we know where the lodge was, and we hopefully have got the names of the members of that lodge, it means that we can get an idea of what these Scots were doing in that part of the world where they settled. Did they admit natives? What trade were they engaged in? It opens all sorts of doors. I suppose that's what I'm saying. And then we can do all sorts of interesting socioeconomic projects at an academic level. David, I passed David a statistical survey of Scottish Freemasons over a period of time, which was taken directly from the material in the books that you've just had a look at. So it's that kind of analysis that allows, that these records allow us to conduct. And that's so it's a statistical analysis, which we've just mentioned. But of course, we've only looked at the membership records, and that is by no means the whole story. For example, in 1885, the Grand George of Scotland stopped writing written records and started to print them, and they're called proceedings. So printed proceedings are much easier to scan and then read, because you can then use optical character recognition to allow you to manipulate the text. Because it's not handwriting, it's printed text, you can then do keyword searches for names, dates, all sorts of things. So once you start digitizing printed material, it becomes a much more useful research tool. And so instead of having to read through month after month of very boring minutes about what people were doing in Grand Lodge, in 1885, you can now just go into the computer and search for the name Cooper, and there you'll find him with all his misdemeanors listed when he was a bad boy in Grand Lodge. But again, it doesn't stop there. Some of our documents are incredibly important in their own right, often very fragile, and some of them, such as this one, are actually very beautiful. This happens to be a membership certificate of the Order of Free Gardeners. So we are not only preserving Masonic material here at Grand Lodge, we're preserving material that has been donated to us over the years, and that also allows us some insight into other so-called secret societies, such as the Order of Free Gardeners in this case. And I think you'll agree with me that that certainly is a document that was worth preserving. And of course, because it's now scanned, it's available to people to examine wherever they are in the world. They don't have to come to Edinburgh to look at this certificate. It can be seen as an image. So again, another great reason why things should be digitized. Then another great hobby horse of mine, because my late wife was a professional photographer, she always had a bee in her bonnet, and quite rightly so. We've got, and I'm sure it's the same in many other parts of the world, we've got hundreds of photographs like this one lying around, but we don't know anything about them. Nobody has written anything on the back of that photograph to tell us what lodge it is. I can tell it's a Scottish lodge from the symbolism. So it's a Scottish lodge, but I don't know which lodge, and I don't know the names of any of the people that were in it. Now, wouldn't it be lovely if we knew the names of the Freemasons that you can see there, and then be able to match them with their names in that great big registration book that you've just seen? That would be a wonderful resource. So I mentioned photographs here as a bit of an appeal. If you've got photographs, when you take, I know digital photographs are different, of course, because they have information embedded in them when the photograph is taken. But if you've got old photographs, printed photographs like this, and you do know what the photograph is of or who the person is, write it on the back, or at least write it on an envelope and put it into an envelope so that future researchers will know what the photograph is. This could be an incredibly important photograph for all I know. There could be a future president of the country of Georgia in there somewhere for all I know. But we will never know because nobody wrote who the people were. So you can see documents can be scanned, but if you don't have the supporting background information, then they are of reasonably limited value. Then, of course, we come to the very mundane things, the Constitution and laws. These are revised with great regularity. I suppose most bureaucracies do the same. The rules are updated as society changes. So we end up with a very large number of different rules and regulations, and they change over time. If we digitize these, scan these, then we can track the changes in a variety of laws. So at one time, the Constitution and laws may have said that if you are a convicted, I'm trying to think of something not too obnoxious, but if you were convicted of some criminal offence in the past, you would have been thrown out of Freemasonry. Today, that offence is no longer a criminal offence, and so we can see that kind of change over time, how Freemasonry reflects the attitudes of society by taking on board the fact that you smoked weed in the 1950s was a criminal offence, whereas now, of course, it's not anywhere near as serious. And then we come perhaps to the more important historical documents, such as the one on the left, the Minute Book of Lodge Aitchison's Haven from 1599. The handwriting is very difficult to read, but at least you've got the basic information there. Now you've got that digitally. Nobody has to handle that document from over 400 years ago. They can see that on that screen. Same goes for a more recent lodge, as you can see, Lodge 1 Lochhead, which is now dormant, but although the lodge no longer exists, we have its records, so we can reconstruct the history of that lodge, despite the fact that there are no members of that lodge left alive. And then, of course, in much more modern terms, more modern books, as they are produced, and I would suggest this, I mean, the Grand Lodge of Scotland produces a yearbook. There's one you can see here on the right. When that book is printed, I would be encouraging everyone who's in a position to do so to get the printer to keep a copy of everything he prints for you as a PDF and gives you that PDF. So although you've got the yearbook and you've paid for the yearbook, you also want to be able to have it not only physically on paper, but also as an electronic record. So although it's a new book, very recent, that eventually will probably become fewer and fewer, but you've got an electronic version. And then, on the left, some lovely illustrations, some engraving frontispieces from other books are also well worth copying digitally. So the list of things that you can digitally scan and copy, and here I've been talking mainly about paper items, but things like jewels and indeed regalia can also be included. What I'm getting at is the list is almost endless as to what can be copied. So why would you want to do this? And of course, as you can see, I'm addressing this mainly to Scottish Freemasons, but this is quite simply, and this applies to you regardless of where you are in the world. They contain everything that you need to know about your history. When people have passed away, you can't ask them any questions. All you can go on is what they wrote and what they have left behind. So it tells us who we are, tells us what we are. And as I say, we can use it to a certain extent to try and perceive the future, try and gauge potential problems, because history repeats itself over and over again. This is one way of using that history to try and anticipate problems. And as well as that, of course, we've got all the good stuff like writing your lodge's history, as well as doing genealogical research. However, having said that, sometimes you come across little gems just like this one. And this was recently discovered. And it's a Masonic document, but it's not owned by the Grand Lodge of Scotland. What it is a membership certificate issued to this chap, James Watt. And as you can see, it's written in very lovely, flowery writing. And this dates from a period before Grand Lodge issued certificates to Master Masons. So this is in fact a Master Mason certificate issued by the Lodge to prove to other Freemasons that he has taken the 3 degrees of Freemasonry. So in other words, it's a Lodge certificate that now in the main has been replaced by Grand Lodge certificates. And as you can see, this Lodge has gone through all the nice words and explained that this is a legitimate lodge under the Grand Lodge of Scotland, and this chap James Watt has been admitted, passed and raised as a Mason in this lodge, Glasgow Royal Arch, and he's a good guy, and he was initiated in 1759. Now, the problem here is the Grand Lodge of Scotland knows nothing about this, because James Watt, this James Watt, is not in the records. So the big book that we saw earlier does not contain the name James Watt. And we know exactly what was going on. The Lodge were saying, well, for every name that we send to Grand Lodge, they charge us £1. So if we initiate 100 people in a year, that's 100 shillings that we've got to send through to Edinburgh. So what we'll do is we'll send the name of every second one that we initiate, and that means that they'll only get 50 shillings and we can keep the rest. And this is exactly what's happened. They've initiated this guy and kept the shilling instead of giving the shilling to Grand Lodge. Now, the reason why this is incredibly important, and it shows you just exactly how records like this are important, is this is the James Watt that was the cause of the Industrial Revolution. This was the James Watt that improved the steam engine to such an extent that mass production became possible. He improved the, I can't remember, was it Bessemer steam engine? And he then went into business with another English engineer whose name escapes me. It's terrible. Bolton, a chap called Bolton. So Watt and Bolton set up a business in England, and they were the main causes for the Industrial Revolution. And here we are, the Grand Lodge of Scotland did not know that James Watt, the engineer, was a Freemason. So it's just for me, it's just a wonderful example of how digitizing records and then making them available can tell a story that would otherwise be unknown. So that lodge, because they didn't pay us a shilling way back in whenever it was, 1763, I've calculated that they owe us £28.55. The only snag is, of course, the lodge doesn't exist anymore, which is a bit of a pity. So, without access to Masonic records, you'll not be able to write your history, you'll not know if any of your ancestors were Freemasons, and you will not know, generally, whether Freemasons played any significant part in the history of your country. So anyway, thank you for watching and listening. I hope you found that to be worthwhile. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brother Bob. Well, first of all, let me, yeah, okay, you removed it. So, Q&A session has started, and please use the raise hand button. I will start with a few questions. You discussed what documents to look for, why preservation is important, and to add to that note, some say that preserving the memory of an individual is the way to immortality. So they use different methodologies, let's say, in order to preserve your memory or experiences that you collected now for your next life. So that's truly, that's exactly what at least we can do with our documents, because every single document that we produce now and seems insignificant and so easy because of the digital era to produce, it still matters from the 100 years perspective what we do now, whatever insignificant it might have, might be or might look. So my first question would be, you have been kind of involved with preserving documents. How technically or how physically they are preserved? Let's say this book, is it placed in any humidor or any? Is it kind of time to time shifted, opened, so the pages don't get glued to each other? What are these technical aspects of preserving these documents so they don't get destroyed by physically destroyed?
Yeah, it's a very good point. What happens is that once a book has been properly treated for archival purposes, and as you saw, the finished version, that's stored, oddly enough, underground here in the basement. And we are very fortunate in Scotland. The climate that we have here means that we don't have to have any kind of climate control equipment installed. But you should, and it reminds me that what we do every 5 or probably every 10 years, we get experts to come in with the equipment to take air samples. They test the humidity, the acidity, the dust content of the atmosphere, etc., etc. And if it turns out that, like these international standards, it's not up to that standard, then we will have to think about buying atmospheric conservation equipment. Fortunately, we don't have to do that just now But in some countries, as particularly hot countries, countries where the temperatures are high, they have to do that because otherwise the paper's organic and it will eventually disintegrate if the conditions aren't right. But the main thing is that once the book has been treated and placed in an environment that's okay, the main thing you can do to preserve it is not to touch it. Because, as I say, handling it is where a lot of the damage comes from. It's also how records get lost. People misplace them, they misfile them. Occasionally, they will steal them. So if they're locked away and can't be touched, looking at them on the screen means that they are completely safe. So.
Okay, and before giving the floor to others, one more question would be, these documents are very old. You mentioned that you have documents, written documents, which date 1592, if I'm not wrong about the date, but somewhere there, right? It's more than 400 years of old. My question would be, if ever like national authorities, or would it be UK authorities, or would it be Scottish authorities, have ever given to these or exceptional books any status of historical document, and are they preserved as historical sources of national importance or something like that? Like they do for buildings, they do for architectural kind of styles. There are some documents that are kept as manuscripts, and you cannot get, for instance, unless you go to that museum of manuscripts we have in Georgia. Even though you are keeping those documents, are they under protection?
Yeah, well, there's two aspects to that. The first thing is that what we've noticed, and it's not just relating to records, as soon as you involve a government in your business, no matter how benign they may be, the government has got a different attitude to things than Freemasons do. And so that's why we, certainly in Scotland, we take no public money whatsoever from government or any outside body, because that gives them some kind of right to have a say or control over what your property is, what your material is. So the short answer is no. I mean, I think these documents are incredibly historically important for this country of Scotland, but we have not approached the government in any way because, as I say, really it's not their business, is it? You know, it's our business. And in the same way, these things are not available. They are available to bona fide researchers who come here to have a look at the documents. But as soon as you put something on the internet, you no longer own it. It becomes the property of the world. So although we've digitally copied this information, it's still the property of the Grand Lodge of Scotland. And although a researcher can use it, he has to come here to use it. He can't access it from the other side of the world. And that's simply because as soon as it's on a screen, you just simply take a screenshot or whatever, and you know that's lost. The Grand Lodge of Scotland no longer has control over it. So essentially, most of this documentation is entirely for internal use, and it's used for, in the main, Masonic use. This is Masonic material, and this gets us back, and I know I'm giving you another long answer to a short question, but this brings us back to this point of friction between the academic world and ourselves. This is our material, and as soon as you give that material to an outside agency like a university or whatever, we have no control over what it is used for. And I don't think we'll ever. I don't think we'll ever solve that problem. And so, I suppose what I'm getting at is, people who want to use this information they have to be vetted. They have to prove that they are bona fide researchers who are doing something with the authority of an academic institution, and all that kind of thing. I know it's awfully long-winded, but we're simply very protective of this material because this material only exists here. So once it's out of this building, it's never, it's gone. It's gone to the four winds.
Okay, thank you for the answers. Let's start with Brother Neil, and then I'll be notified by Brother Robert in the private chat. Brother Neil, floor is yours.
Thank you, Brother David. Brother Bob, thank you for another interesting conversation. I had two questions. The first one relates to the book that you showed us at the start of the talk. It was unbound and then was restored page by page and scanned. Can you give us an idea of how many hours went into that job to complete that book to its rebound state?
I can. But it varies enormously because it depends on not just the condition of the book, but the condition of each page. So if the guy's taking a page out and it looks fine, it's to go on a scanner, but it has a very severe crease in it, then that page can't be scanned. The page has got to be repaired. So to be honest, I would not put a time scale on it, but you're talking about several weeks.
Yeah, okay.
Full-time weeks.
It's understandable. So the people who do that work, who do the restoration work, are they hired expert technicians in that work, or are they volunteers?
It depends. It depends on what the material is. Those books are physically extremely large, as you saw. And so the equipment, and I know you can scan things in parts and then stitch them together. What we decided to do was, we wanted the digitization to be a single image with no stitching of bits of images together. That means that it has to go to an outside agency who specializes in that kind of large scale piece of paper. Internally here, the digitization project goes on apace with smaller scanners, either book scanners or flatbed scanners. But again, that's limited because of the size of the equipment. Having said that, a new Grand Secretary is in post, and so all this kind of stuff is up for grabs. Things may change, I think, in the future. But at the moment, very large scale items like that book have to go outside to be dealt with. And obviously, it has to be paid for.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I can't wait for the pandemic to be over to come and visit. Thank you, David.
Great.
Thank you, Neil. Brother Robert Kleeman, floor is yours. And with your permission, I will share the interesting document that Northern Masonic jurisdiction has prepared, right?
Absolutely.
The floor is yours.
We have the similar registers in Ontario, the 36-inch registers. What we have also, though, is we have a card catalog system that references alphabetically every member into those registers. So it makes it easy to look up. So there's 157 drawers that are 15 inches long. of cards from 1855 up to about 1980, 1985 of everybody who ever joined Freemasonry in Ontario. And you wind up with this really, people come in to do research. It's the card catalog really makes a big difference in being able to go through that. Scanning those registers would be fabulous. We also have the semi-annual returns of all the lodges dating back to 1855 as well, so that each lodge could back up their entire membership through there as well.
Yeah,
It was
I wish
terrific.
we could have done. Yeah, wish we could have done the same, to be quite honest. But when we started, I mean, literally, they started in 1736 with a registration book.
Yeah.
And that is all that's what they're doing to this day. Exactly what they were doing in 1736, obviously.
We
Additional
started
information is
digitizing it
added.
in about 1982, 1980, somewhere around there. We started to use a database program. But
Yeah.
before that, it's a really neat process. And I estimated we have about 550,000 cards in our database system, which reference each of those big registers. And we could also put up to, if someone had multiple membership, the card would allow you to put up to, I think, 5 lodges in before you started a new card for that person. The only place you run into issues is when you have a Smith or a Jones, because we've got like 5 drawers. Even though it's alphabetical, we have like 5 drawers of Smiths and maybe another 4 or 5 drawers of Joneses.
Yeah.
So it starts to get difficult to find the details when you go through those types of things.
But these are cards that are typed. They've been
They're handwritten
typewritten.
cards. They're stored alphabetically and then by lodge. So if you went in and found somebody, A. Smith, for instance, all of the, and they'd have their full name, but so all of the David Smiths, for example, would be stored by lodge number. And then you would get on to Edward Smith, and they would all be stored by lodge number from lodge 2 to lodge 700 and whatever. And then as you got to Frank Smith, they would be stored the same way. So you could, if you had an idea of where the person lived and a little bit about their background, you could actually go into the catalogs really easily. And we also have a number of sheets that reference time periods to the lodges, so we know what registers they're in as well without having to look up the card catalogs. Having done, I've been into those the registers hundreds of times for doing historical research for people. And they're so appreciative when you're able to pick up their father and their grandfather and great grandfather and all the rest of those things and the lineage and what they've done through Masonry. And there's been some really neat stories. We had a kid come in who was studying in university, and his father was a Mason. We looked up the register, and at the end, it said that he had died. And I'm very sorry. It turns out that the secretary of the lodge had lost track of 20-odd people that year, and he marked them all dead on the same day. And we had to call the secretary up and get him to fix the semi-annual returns to bring them up to speed. And also, one of my comments was, by the way, you also owe us the returns for those last 8 years where you had marked people who were alive dead.
Good stuff. Wonderful.
Okay, thank you, Brother Robert. Do I see the virtual Order of Sapere the T-shirt on you, right?
Yes, I'm wearing it.
Nice one.
If I can get closer. Probably I can keep going
on the other side. Yeah.
There we go.
There you go. There you go. Nice one. Okay, Brother Richard, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Brother Robert, for a lovely presentation. I have a few questions, so I'll ask a few and then I'll come back later on, and maybe ask a few at the end, towards the end. The first question was the cost relationship to value of books being copied or bound. See, we have a very fundamental cause, if we have over 500, 600, 700 books, and we're not just talking about like the lodge books, but the libraries that are being preserved by the lodges themselves. At least in India, we have a lot of libraries and a lot of books being preserved over there that are not being digitized. And flatbed digitization would damage the books, so scanners normally would be used. And scanners, of course, have huge expenses. I mean, can go up to a lakh of rupees, 45,000, per scanner. So how do you create this cost-effective valueness? I mean, and how do you fund these kind of projects to get them going in your lodges? I mean, it's really expensive, to do a book or to do a painting or to do anything, Could you give me an insight into that?
Well, there's a variety of ways of doing it, but I'll be quite honest. You just simply make a start. You make a case for this book is important. We should be preserving it. And then once you've done that, you move on to the next one. If you don't have a budget, then it is a problem. But you've simply got to make a start. And I suppose what I would do is that I would, as we did, you would prioritize what are the most important records that require preservation. In my opinion, it was the membership records more than anything else. The membership records were the most important. So that's the things that we started to digitize immediately. Now, you could send all the material out to a private company and they would charge you a couple of £1 million and they would do the whole job and that would be fine. That's simply not feasible. So what we have done is we simply will pick one of those registers and have one every 3 months or every 4 months done. And that means you can budget it because you know that in that 3 or 4 month period, that's the amount you're going to spend on that one item. And I know it's a bit disheartening, but I mean, I know full well that I'm never going to see the end of this project. But having started it, all you can do is hope that people will do it after you've gone. The other thing to think about is that if you have a library, and when you're talking about a library, I'm assuming you're talking about a library of printed books.
Correct.
Right. Well, if you've got a list or a catalogue of those books, first thing to do would be to compare the books that you have, the physical books you have, with the catalogue in, say, the Cagliostro e-library that David knows a lot about. And a lot of ordinary, dare I say, ordinary Masonic books have already been digitized. And so it may not be necessary for you to digitize them anyway. It may just be necessary for you to preserve them or get them repaired or whatever. The other, and that, I think that e-library, David will tell us, but it's got a huge number of Masonic books that have already been scanned. So it might save you from doing that yourself. Now, the other thing to do is look at Google Books. Google have said that it's their intention to scan every book that has ever been printed and is out of copyright. And they are presently doing something like, or they're presently scanning something like 2 to 3 million books per year. So equally, going to Google Books, typing in the author and the title, you may well find that that book has already been scanned by Google Books. The problem between those two sources is that a lot of our books, and certainly here in Scotland, a lot of books about Freemasonry were printed for private use. So they were never sold to the public, they were never circulated to the public. They are simply owned by Freemasons and Masonic libraries. They're the ones that need the most immediate attention because they are, by their very nature, very rare, because the big institutions like Google Books haven't got their hands on them. So that would be my first way of doing it. Find out whether or not you actually do need to scan these things in the first place.
We also have a lot of paintings and other rigmarole, so that stuff preservation is equally as difficult. In fact, you were talking about something I wanted to bring up, that there are ways to spray special preservation sprays on the papers or the parchments and stuff, the larger documents, that preserve them and also keep them waterproof. So it could be something interesting to look at with regards to preservation of the future of documents, at least in this retrospect.
Yeah, it's a highly, I have to say, it's a highly specialist profession here anyway. Certain documents here, especially very old ones, are actually put into a bath of special liquid where they're left to soak for anything up to 3 months. 12 weeks they rest in this liquid, and that removes all the impurities, all the acid, and it also restores a lot of the handwriting. But when you're paying somebody to look after a document for months at a time, it's not cheap. And that's a big problem. It's a big problem. Perhaps there should be some kind of international, Masonic international fund, some sort of international Masonic appeal. But I mean, I suppose I'm running before we're even stumbling, let alone walking. The problem is that we here tonight don't know who's got what. So I don't know what books you have that, I mean, I may well have a duplicate that you could have to replace one that's falling to pieces. But without that kind of basic information, we can't really help each other.
Correct. Very true. Yeah, even the idea of the scanners, I mean, even though I thought, make it more internal, get brethren in the lodge to take part, train them in certain aspects, and maybe get a book or, whatever we can save, do it bit by bit, to whatever ability we can do it. That was the idea. But even the scanners, even the basic setup costs are so expensive, just the scanners alone. And then the time, where did the people have the time to go into the libraries, and then jurisdictional problems, and then who's going to keep the information once it's saved? I mean, it becomes one mess after the next. Yeah. So by the time we're done, we throw everything out. We prefer to throw it in the dustbin. Yeah. Understand? Then to preserve it and, swallow everyone's understanding and say, come on, let's get these libraries or get a unity of people together, whether international or local, and do this. And that's what you have done something that's amazing, right? You have taken that initiative and forwarded it.
Sure, but to be honest, to be quite fair, Richard, you've got to remember, I've got one Grand Lodge to deal with and nobody else. So I call the shots. So I don't have a lot of arguments. I just basically make the arrangements and make it happen. When you end up with multiple jurisdictions, and I know the situation in places like Bombay, it must be very difficult. All I can suggest is start as simply as you can. Have a look at Google Books, have a look at the Cagliostro Library, and it may well be that you'll save yourselves a lot of work that way.
Okay, thank you so much. Let's move on. Brother Jacques has a question. Is there a list available of digital documents that are available?
No.
No catalog?
No.
No list. Okay, then Brother Mircea, floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. First, I want to make a comment that will maybe help brethren around about digitalizing books, and I only mean books. There are a few very cheap and easy to use options now that use integrated artificial intelligence, and you can download if you have a good smartphone with a good camera, you can just install the app. And then you don't need to take the book apart to get a straight page with a straight text, because the artificial intelligence does that for you. So you just open the book, go page by page, take the picture, and the app processes, and you get a very nice result. which is not different than what Google Books does with their scanning. And the app is from $5 to 15, maybe $20.
Yeah.
So that can be done by any brother. Just he installs the app, he takes a book from the library, he does it, and that's
Sure.
it.
Could I just explain the problem we have doing that? The international standards stipulate that you must have an image that is at least 300 dpi. Phone cameras are 72, which is fine for putting on the internet and looking at on a screen. And that's the kind of image that you'll see for Google. But what Google do is they scan at the maximum resolution available, and then they reduce it so that you can see it on your screen. Anything above 72, you can't tell the difference in quality. It's when you come to print it or look at it up close that the quality is extremely poor. So although it will do for what you need it for, no institution, no university would accept a document taken on a mobile phone as being of sufficient quality for academic purposes. If it's just for your lodge, of course, that's completely different. So as long as you bear in mind that if you're happy to have the lowest standard or the lowest quality, then that's fine. But your problem arises when you want to use it for other purposes. If you make it, what I'm getting at is, if you have it scanned at the maximum resolution, you can always reduce it, but you can't increase it from the lowest resolution to the best. And that's the problem, as I unfortunately discovered.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just for preserving the large library and make it accessible to brethren and so on. And I have a question to you, dear brother. I find that another type of Masonic document that is very important are the communications between lodges, grand lodges, brethren sending communication to lodge and so on. I saw before 20 years ago, let's say, we have telex, we have fax, but then the email started. And the volume of communication naturally grew by that. So my question is, do you have at Grand Lodge of Scotland a protocol or a way of archiving these email communications?
The short answer is no, because if we preserved all the emails, they would be, I mean, sorry, you mean on paper?
No, not on paper,
electronically?
digitally.
Digitally, yes, these are on multiple servers, so we have them. But no, we couldn't make a hard copy of them. I thought you meant, were they printed so people could read them? No, they're preserved. And that's one thing about the internet and stuff on the internet, regardless of what people might think, none of this stuff ever disappears. It's always there somewhere.
Yeah.
So even the emails will still be around a long time in the future, for good or ill. Some senders may regret knowing, some might regret knowing that.
That's true. Thank you, Brother Bob, for this interesting lecture, and thank you, David.
Thank you, Brother Mecha. Very interesting questions. I would add there that what needs to be done, also an issue, I think, and every organization I join or lead or am part of, I always try to kind of move to corporative mailing, so to make sure that private mail is not used by persons, because very important communication is sometimes missed out because it belongs to someone. Someone then moves, dies, changes the password, forgets the password, and you have no control over Gmail or, I don't know, many other domains. So what I always try to push for everyone is that if you are in a position to communicate on behalf of any institution, whether it be lodge, company, Grand Lodge, please use that particular mail so we can pick and save that communication for future generation, and that it just get lost because you just change your mind or change your attitude or just suddenly hit the wrong button and you didn't you just deleted everything. So that's kind of one of the perspectives also. Brother Petr is asking, Petr Kabesh, what are the annual costs of taking care of archives?
Well, the sky's the limit. I mean, you can literally spend millions. And of course, as we know, governments regularly do. But of course, it's not their money they're spending. The difference for Freemasons is preserving our archives has got to be paid for by us, whereas the government is not under that constraint. So every Grand Lodge, every jurisdiction, every Masonic organization will have to decide if you don't want to preserve your records or you don't have the money, then you're not going to do it. It's just not going to happen. The main thing I think to do is you need to get an agreement with the people who control the purse strings, that this is very important. It's part of your Masonic history and heritage. How I've explained it is that if we have a lovely oil painting, it's an asset, it's part of the history. If something goes wrong with that oil painting, it gets damaged or whatever, you will pay to have it repaired. And every now and again, we'll pay to have it cleaned and preserved. Now, why wouldn't you do exactly the same for written records? It's the same with our buildings. If a window gets broken, you fix the window. You don't just leave it broken. So you've got to maintain things. Now, it becomes a problem when people see Masonic records as some kind of very special thing. And how I explain this to people would be, well, it's special to us because it is our material. What would happen if in your family, every single photograph, every single letter, every single piece of paper that had anything at all to do with your family was suddenly destroyed? Would you be very happy at that? Well, no. So you take steps to preserve it, even if it's a matter of putting the photographs into a photograph album or whatever. You do things to preserve the things that are of sentimental value as well as historical value. And so that's the argument that we've got to use, that this information is important. How we preserve it, of course, is the other argument, but you've got to get them to agree in principle that it's worth preserving. And once you get that agreement, then you can work out how to do it.
Okay, answers taken. Brother John Cameron, floor is yours.
Thank you, Brother David. Brother Robert, appreciate the information. I have two questions, if I may. So the first question, the Grand Lodge of Scotland is preserving and archiving Lodge's material. Are you also doing the side degrees of the concordant bodies, or are they doing their own archival?
No, we don't do any of their material, and I don't think they've even ever asked us to be involved in that. And I think that's simply because of the nature of Scottish Freemasonry. These other organizations we recognize as being part of the Masonic family, but they do their own thing. Okay. And so the answer is no, we don't.
I can understand that. To just provide you with some contextual framework, our grand jurisdiction in Canada here in Nova Scotia is about 5,000 members. So we're small. You can tell by my last name that I have a Scottish heritage, and consequently I'm concerned about costs and expenditures. So now, and I also recognize the importance of preserving our history, because we go back over 250 years. So the cost element for a small jurisdiction is a factor, and I know your capital costs or startup costs for something like this would be something that would want to deal with differently, and then you have your operating costs. So a long introduction to my question, Brother Cooper. I'm thinking to justify and to obtain the money, it has to be done with the approval of all of the lodge members at a grand communication. Our budgets are approved in a grand communication. So I need to get some estimation then of the cost. I'm wondering if your operating costs, your yearly budget, divided by the number of Masons that you have. So to come up with a per capita expenditure to preserve your material. Have you ever looked at it or done an analysis like that?
The short answer is no, and that's because of the nature of Scottish Freemasonry, because there are Scottish lodges in 47 other countries. So the calculation is incredibly complex, to be honest. So I make a sales pitch. This book is going to cost X amount of money to put to rights and to have scanned. And so I deal with it that way. I would much rather do something as you're suggesting, that there is a small levy that is ring fenced from the annual fee paid by the brethren that automatically comes to me for that work, so that then I know that I've got a cash flow to use. But it doesn't, unfortunately, it doesn't work like that. That's one of the reasons why, and the other, I haven't touched on this, but this is the other approach that we have here. I would far rather a Scottish lodge in Hong Kong or Australia or wherever sent us their minute books and other records. They can put it on the, on the slowest surface rate available from the postal service, and eventually, and sometimes it takes months, but eventually it will arrive here, and then I can preserve it. Doesn't mean to say I'm going to digitize it as soon as it arrives, but at least it's here centrally along with all the other lodge material, and hopefully my successors will get round to continuing what I've started and will digitize those records. I cannot digitize a lodge records in Hong Kong because they're in Hong Kong, hence the reason I need them here. Same goes for lodges here in Scotland. Unfortunately, lodges do become extinct. It is the Masonic law here that everything that belongs to a lodge at the point of extinction comes to Grand Lodge, and that applies to lodges overseas. But not every lodge is compliant with that requirement, shall we say. But those lodges, and this is the sad thing, those lodges that take these very simple steps, they're the lodges that are going to be remembered in the future. The lodges that are lazy or incompetent or don't do anything at all, they will simply disappear and be forgotten. And that's their choice.
Okay, so let's move on. There is a question from Brother Jacques Hugebert. I've been trying to see a copy of the Grand Lodge of Scotland seal for the period 1760 to 1770 to verify the authenticity of a document. Can a picture of this seal be obtained, and how?
Now, that's kind of round the wrong way. What you would normally do is you would normally send the image to the Grand Lodge and ask them to authenticate it. If you follow me, that so
Sure. Sure.
yeah, I wouldn't give you the information to allow you to self-authenticate it, because that's not being authenticated by the Grand Lodge. Then that's being authenticated by the individual who owns the item, and that happens with me, unfortunately with people who've got something and they want to auction it, and they want me to say this is a very special item. It's dated such and such, and the next thing I know, it appears on an auction site as authorised by the curator of the Grand Lodge of Scotland. This is a highly valuable item, which I want £500,000 for. So
I don't think Jack is kind of asking for verification of authenticity. If we remove just that part, is that picture available? For whatever reasons.
Let
me repeat it. I have, well, it is in the public chat. So Jack said, I have been trying to see a copy of the Grand Lodge of Scotland seal for period 1760 to 1770 to verify, but to whatever reasons, he was looking for that picture. Is that, can it be obtained?
The short answer is I have to confess I don't know. And here's the reason. And again, you've got to remember Scotland is just it's on a different planet sometimes. The Grand Lodge of Scotland had no rules and regulations whatsoever until 1836. So any matters of governance was dealt with by reference to the ritual. So there was no Masonic legality applied, and so equally the need for things like seals and whatever was laid at lodge level. And that certificate that you saw for James Watt is a classic example of the lodges doing what most grand lodges do. Now I'll have to go and look. I mean, in all honesty, I've never been asked that question before, so I'm not ducking the question. I simply don't know. And do I know? It's Jack. I'm trying to find this. The name Jack sounds very familiar.
Jacques Hugevert. He's been he's past Grandmaster of Czech Republic. He's been speaker here several times. He holds.
Right.
Jack, are you here? Could you speak up?
Yes.
Yeah, please go ahead.
We have met, Bob.
Oh, hello. I recognize the face now. Yes. Hello. I was thinking of some other Jacques. I'm sorry, I've got the wrong person. I had the wrong person. I've now got the right person.
I have been trying for at least 15 years to see a seal on a charter and on documents, because there is a lodge at Namur in Belgium that has a number of documents showing seal of the Grand Lodge of Scotland. And I have been wondering whether it was genuine or fake.
I see.
Not to sell.
Right.
Not to sell.
Okay. That's interesting. The lodge at Namur, there's quite a few from that period in that general area. I'll say general, what they would normally do is they would place the seal on the document and then send it away. It's whether we actually, when the seal gets replaced, I don't know whether we kept the old one or not. And that is the problem. Because they would say, oh, we've got a new seal, we don't need the old one. And the old one would get thrown away. And that's where my problem lies, I think. all I can do, Jacques, is have a look.
Would you be able to say or describe how it looked like from any of the documents that may be extant from that period?
I would want to go and have a look at documents from that period.
Is there any charter from that period that you would have?
Yeah, yes, that's oddly enough, yes. In fact, yes, we got one back just from just this morning that has a seal. Just bear with me a second.
There you go.
This is a charter.
Could
from a
you
lodge
remove
no
your
longer exists. And
Brother
typically the
Robert,
seal is in a little metal box.
put
It
your
waxes. Oh,
earbuds. Yeah.
sorry, I thought. Yeah,
Can
okay.
you
I
can you
can half
kindly
hear you.
yeah, can you kindly remove for a second virtual background? And that way we will
Oh.
see the paper much better because it overimposes on it. Yeah, now it should work better.
Now I need to reattach my headphones and
You
you
don't
can
need
see
to reattach your head.
I'm a real expert at this stuff, as you can see. Right. No.
What are the emblems on the seal?
Right. This, I'm to be honest, I don't know what the date of this is yet. You see the charter, I mean, there's nothing printed. These charters were handwritten.
Yes.
And I have to just try and find out where they put the date. Oh, 5th day of February, 1770 years.
That's exactly the one.
Yes.
And I need to verify all that, but the name of the Grand Master was Adolphus Otten. So
Yes.
we'll know when he was Grand Master, and if that date
He
ties
was
up.
Grand Master in 1770. I can tell you.
Right.
He was
well,
Grand Master in 17.
Well, that's exactly when this charter was granted, and this charter arrived on my desk this morning, literally this morning, and the seal is in exceptionally good condition, and I can certainly get an image of that to you. But as I would have expected, it's an image of Saint Andrew, and
Yes.
it's again, it's I love this kind of iconography and symbolism, because what they've got, this is Saint Andrew holding his cross. So in fact, the cross is in front of him, and so he's holding the cross, right? Well, he can't be a saint because he was crucified on the cross. So that means on this particular image, he's still alive, holding the cross. So he's not at that point a saint because he's still alive. He's not dead. So the actual symbol's wrong, but it's common. It's a common mistake. So it's a picture of a man in a long gown with a kind of multiplication cross, holding it in two hands. There is some Latin. Yeah.
Is there some text? Some text?
Yes, there's some Latin. And I would need, unfortunately, the very top part of the seal is missing. But what I think I'll do is I'll take a photograph of it and send it to you, so you can compare it.
Thank you.
That
And
would
I
be
will
the
send you.
best idea.
I will send you a very good photograph of the seal.
Okay. Yeah. I mean,
That-
yeah. No,
That will hopefully clarify.
yeah, well, the Latin has been abbreviated, and my Latin's not good enough to tell you what it says. So, but yeah, we can fix you up with that. If you can email me your email address or put your email address in the chat room privately, then I'll arrange to get that. I'll get that photograph for you.
Okay, I'll do it right now.
Now you see now you see the problem you've caused me, Jacques. I mean, by having me take away my virtual background, you've shown the world how untidy my office is.
But on the other hand, we finally came to the end with 15-year-old Kist. Brother Jacques was involved. So
yeah, good. Well, I'm sorry you waited 15 years, Jacques.
Maybe it's more, I don't know.
So nothing is coincidence. See, today we had a lecture. Jacques was at the end of 15 years cast, and the document came in the morning to Bob. So everything happens.
Yeah, we got a result.
All right, with your permission, I will move on, and in private you can exchange that that information. Brother Aubrey is asking. Brother Aubrey, should I read it or you want to take the floor? I can do it for you. Is it a requirement that the data from dormant lodges be returned to Grand Lodge?
Yeah, that's the law. That's the rule that when a Scottish lodge becomes dormant, all the lodge property, including the money, but all the furniture, the regalia, the minute books, automatically becomes the property of Grand Lodge, and that's common across the world, I believe. The problem is that when you have a lodge in Australia, which goes dormant, and of course means they've got no money, how are they going to send all this stuff back to Britain?
Exactly, that was going to be my problem. The lodge I'm referring to is Star and Thistle, which is in Chile, Lodge 505, which was formed in 1871. It met in Valparaiso, and it went dormant about 8 or 10 years ago, perhaps. 505, Bob, 1870.
Yeah.
And I mean, Lodge Britannia, which is in Santiago, we have some of the equipment and things from Lodge Star and Thistle, but the full documentation of attendance registers and things like that is still in Valparaiso. And in my opinion, to send something like that all back to Grand Lodge of Scotland is going to cost a fortune.
Yeah, there are ways of doing it, Aubrey. And what we've discovered is that what you can do if you've got a shipping agent. Again, I know you're relying on contacts here, but a shipping agent will usually find an empty corner on a container, and it ends up in that little corner. Now, it might well be that little space doesn't become available for months, but once it's in that container, it might be at sea for 2 months or longer, but eventually it arrives here, and the cost is usually very, very low because it's simply taking up space that wouldn't be used anyway. But you need to get a shipping agent that is friendly, shall we say. If you can't do that, then I'm sorry, I really don't know what you do. Perhaps you send one item every year or something until eventually it's all back here.
you need a pattern agent as well.
Yeah, there's no simple answer to that.
That also includes,
Yeah,
that
that's
also
why.
includes various lodge jewels.
Ah, right. Okay. Yeah. See, all these are part of the history of Scottish Freemasonry in that part of the world that we really don't know very much about because the records are there, not here. The answer, it's not an easy answer.
Okay. Aubrey, your connection is very bad. So I'll skip
Okay.
to next speaker. Brother Robert, ponytail this one because we today have many Roberts.
Am I coming through clearly?
Yeah, you're fine. Go ahead.
Again, so many things at once. It's great. I think I'll kind of go backwards. You were talking about email chain of custody, and that's something that our lodge is working on diligently currently to have a permanency of each officer in the lodge that hands off that particular office to the next person. We found so many people were using their work emails, and once they left the job, there was all of a sudden 4 or 5 years worth of contact gone. People have turned to me, even though I'm only a treasurer. I've, because I'm a gen addict or genealogical addict, or as I call myself, the inner exile archivist, I have retained most stuff for the past over a decade. And basically, as you said, I put them into PDFs and then categorize them by year. And when something's gone missing from the records or something, they send me on a Sherlock Holmes mission. And it's helped us in terms of, getting certain records, financial or what have you, or especially genealogical, because we have people that weren't, their records weren't available at the time of death. They had long been in just a book that nobody had and had not been digitized or contact. And some of them have the most interesting backgrounds. They were in World War II. We had a guy that was on the lifted the flag at Iwo Jima, stuff like that.
Really?
That
Wow.
our lodge needed to know. We had somebody that presided at the World's Fair. And this was unbeknownst to a lot of the people in the lodge. So I've gone a digging, and since then, going to the aspect about support or financing, a lot of our prospects now have skipped several generations of Masonic background. They're coming to me with questions, and I've gone digging in Vermont, in California, South Australia, and so on, and reconnected them with their Masonic ancestors. And so I've been very, very happy that there's some material out there. And as you said, Google Books, and I think it was Scribed or something, had proceedings dating back hundreds of years that were in the, one's in the Michigan University of Michigan's library, another one in University of Illinois, and so on. So some of these things are out there and scanned, like I said, at the highest quality, which meant that I had to take them piece by piece and reduce them to share with the other brothers.
Yeah.
But it's a labor of love. I like doing it because being the history buff that I am, I want everybody to know from whence we came. But
Sure,
I got to thank you, and I can truly appreciate the the level to which you have gone for the Grand Lodge of Scotland is amazing. Thank you very much for
Yeah.
what you do.
Oh, thank you. I'm just looking before you leave that very subject. If you're using Outlook as we do here, you can set up an auto archive for the emails, and so all the emails are automatically archived to the server. And I'm just looking at the settings here. I mean, I've got mine's automatically archived, and it becomes a PST file, .pst, which you can then only open in Outlook. But there are ways of archiving this material, and therefore, if you can archive it, you can recover it. So it's from emails, you might want to investigate that as well.
Yeah, actually, you can go to Outlook archive folder, and you will have everything which is archived. And if it's linked to that file, then you will see everything. So it's much less in size and everything. So thank you, Brother Robert. There is one question before I give the floor to Brother Richard. While you were showing as a sample James Watt's membership letter or initiation letter, if you can share that again. It well, with the size we were seeing it, at least myself, I didn't see any signature on it of anyone. Or any regalia as such. So what was the kind of so-called verifying factor on that letter? I don't think
find it.
Yeah, it was somewhere at the end.
Yes, it was, wasn't it? Right.
Well, at least I haven't, I couldn't see it on my screen, so maybe I'm wrong.
There were several different handwritings and the names at the end.
Yeah, here we are. I'll share this with you so you can see it. You see that? Let me see if I can
It's
enlarge
coming.
it.
It's coming.
Oh gosh. Oh no.
Yeah, that one.
That's it. So yeah, right at the bottom, in the bottom right-hand corner, you'll see it
those
says,
are signatures.
yes, that's a list of signatures. So the text on the right-hand side is my translation of the handwriting on the left-hand side.
Okay.
And
understood.
so I mean the wording is very standard for that kind of document at that time. But yes, and you can see, I mean, and this is what I just find it so much fun. The master, the senior warden, the junior warden, and the secretary have all signed that document, given it to James Watt, the engineer, but they've not told the Grand Lodge of Scotland.
Yeah.
There's all sorts of those types of documents all over the place. I've done presentations on Master Mason certificates, and there's, especially in the US, it was very prevalent just for the lodges to issue certificates.
Yeah, I think the significance
Their Grand
is
Lodge doesn't have any record of it.
Yeah, no, it's the significance, I think, of that one is James Watt.
Yeah.
We would never have noticed or been concerned if it hadn't been such an incredibly important person. That's a bit like saying we're not telling Grand Lodge we initiated the king, you know. Just wonderful. What these Masons
we
get
were
up
missing.
To when they're not.
We were missing a financial record one time, and the only proof that I had was somebody had signed a pizza dish that I found 10 years later.
Right. I was just going to say, I almost forgot about this, but there is a document that's issued by the the National Archive of Scotland for people who are not professional archivists. And it gives some very good guidance. So I've put that guidance in the chat room as a PDF, if you give it a little while for it to download. So anyone who's involved in the kind of archiving of material, then that's the Scottish National Archive guidance for non-archivists. Sorry, very long-winded, but that once it downloads, you can have that.
Okay, Brother Richard, floor is yours. And just reminding that we're almost 2 hours here, and Bob is still at the office for the lecture purposes. And can we take like 10 more minutes?
Yeah,
Brother Bob,
sure.
you're fine?
Sure, yeah.
Oh, okay, Brother Richard, floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I love the idea of how you join this information, and how just now we got this lovely bit of information released. As David also said, there are no real coincidences. The document just appeared on your table and pow, it was right there, and it just sort of happened. So the same way I feel honestly that there are, that's teaching us something, you know, spiritually. It's like a message to us that David divinatively has put together over here. It's saying that we've got to unite in a sort of way that we can communicate information to each other, right, David? I mean, is that correct? So if we can create a sort of lodge of researchers with different people around the world tied up with David Cooper, with Robert Cooper's idea and all his response, then that would be something that would really expand the growth and cement the foundation on a more universal level. I mean, just a point of view. Thank you.
I think you're absolutely right, Richard. I think that this kind of thing demonstrates how we can rise above problems like this pandemic. A lot of organizations would have simply stopped talking to each other. I think, excuse me, I think this demonstrates that we have grown as an organization, but grown in a very unusual way, a way that would not otherwise have happened. And to me, that's great. And I think you're right. I think there's a spiritual element in that, of the way people have come together, talked about things that they would never have done had they got together in a lodge. Just wouldn't have happened.
So true.
Thank you, brother. Thank you. Thank you, David. Thank you all.
Thank you, Richard. Okay, I guess we have covered all the questions. If once again, I will remind the viewers who are on YouTube, you can ask your questions in the chat room. I will read it if you have any so far. So I think we're at the end of the lecture today. Unless anyone wants to use the opportunity to ask the question to Bob regarding the topic.
Let me get
final call. Yeah,
just the kind of thing that Richard was talking about, and also thanks to Jacques for getting on to me about the seal. I'm just looking at the names on this charter, the signatures on this charter, and one of them is a guy called Dr. James Lind. He was the guy that found the cure for scurvy for the Royal Navy. So now I actually have his signature. I didn't know that that's who that is. I knew he was he is a senior Grand Warden of the Grand Lodge of Scotland in 1770, and he discovered that using citric acid cured scurvy.
Well,
wow,
there you go. Good, very good. All right, then let me start finishing the official part. Then we can talk off topic as long as we like. Final call for any comments on the topic or any questions. Okay, I think we can finalize the lecture. Brother Bob, do you want to leave any final remarks for viewers in future regarding archiving and the importance of doing and kind of taking good care of the records once again?
I can just imagine there's lots of wives out there that are going to hate hearing this, but the answer is never throw anything away. Keep it all. Keep everything. Let somebody else in the future sort it out. Keep it. Don't get rid of it.
Okay, Brother Richard, you raised the hand. You want to add something?
No, brother. Sorry, it was just raised from before. Apologies.
Okay.
I like that last comment, keep everything. I do that also myself as much as I can.
Everybody like this.
I suspect that we've all got our own little Masonic room in our houses where it's just loaded with Masonic junk that all the women of the world wish we would get rid of. But,
True.
You are true, I daily almost have every week 2 or 3 times get that comment, from my wife,
Are you familiar with the term a jumble sale? In Scotland anyway, a jumble sale is usually in need of charity, and it's when everybody in a community gets all their junk. It's called jumble, all their jumble, and they take it to a hall or a Masonic lodge or somewhere like that.
Flea market.
Then they sell it to each other, and they all take each other's junk home, and in the process they've raised a lot of money, and they've got new junk to look at. So it's an old Scottish tradition, So don't throw anything away, because there's other people that will swap their junk for your junk,
Yeah, we used to do it in the lodge, sometimes.
Let me, sorry for interruption, Brother Gurshad. I will finish the recording so it is split as a lecture, and then we'll open floor for everyone. My apologies. So I'll just quickly remind everyone that today we discussed preservation of Masonic records. We had the honor to host Brother Robert Cooper. He was appeared the 114th this time. Today is 20th of November 2020. So Nahwamdis, that's goodbye in Georgian, and as I'm in Turkey, I would say güle güle from Istanbul. So this concludes the official part of the lecture.
Aşk olsun.
Just while somebody is in the chat room, I tell you a great little app that I came across just recently for, I think I've got it on my iPhone. It's called Book Buddy. And all you do is, once you've got the app, obviously, you scan the barcode of the book, and everything, including an image of the cover, is downloaded to your iPhone. And so and if you're like me, you've got lots of books, you end up with a library catalog on your iPhone simply by using this app. So it's called Book Buddy. I recommend you have a look at it in the App Store.
This part is not moderated. Anyone just use microphone if you want to take the floor, please.
Thank God we actually live in a digital age, because what happens is if we had to actually get the amount of books we read in PDFs nowadays, we'd have to have libraries. Hundreds and hundreds of books, Now we can have all our junk stuck into a little file, put on a little disk in our phone,
Yeah. Indeed. You imagine what it would have been like for some very famous people if they used emails instead of actually writing letters. Yeah, probably wouldn't know very much.
Great things would have happened, but because of speed and time, no? When information moves faster, things get known quicker, you know? So I guess that is something to think about, right? Like now we're in the communication age, you know, and this has been faster than we've ever seen in the last, I think, 10 years. Nobody has seen this kind of information growth and intelligence expansion, I think, in the last 200 years.
Sure. Yep, it's in some ways it's a bit scary, certainly for people of a certain age who can remember the world before computers. And that was a very different world.
We had a past Grand Master who
I
was
thoroughly
a
agree.
publisher of a newspaper. And when he'd get home every night, he'd put something down or do a drawing or something on and put it into what was essentially a binder and mount pictures up. And Grand Lodge has probably 50 of these from him, and the public library probably has 200 or 300 of them. If he had had technology available to him and the drawings that he did and all the other things, it was incredible, the volume. And he was, one of the things he did was interesting was he took historical facts and made chairs out of them. So when they were ripping down the Goose and the Gridiron, for example, he went and got some of the timbers and had them shipped to Canada, and he made 3 chairs out of the timbers from the Goose and the Gridiron.
Yeah, amazing.
Wow, that's really amazing.
Yeah, I wish I had that kind of talent.
Well, he didn't do it. He had people to do it for him. But
I think we've lost the patronage in this 21st century. You know, the patronage of Freemasonry to sort of move this stuff and to keep this information preserved has sort of been disemboweled. I don't know, lost in a way.
I think the kids that are coming in now are more appreciative than our middle generations have been in terms of that, and are looking towards assisting in preservation, since they're looking at, you know, graves of great grandfathers with square and compass and so on. So there is an iota of hope there, as far as I'm concerned, that all this has not been a waste of time. And you know, they keep on saying, "Oh, I'll get, you know, I could do this at such and so DPI. I'll make sure that everything's annotated." And I'm like, "Okay, love you, kid. Let's give you a petition now."
Well, yeah, and of course, one of the downsides of all of this, of course, is that Freemasonry is very much an oral, interactive human activity, and as the younger generation, especially because of this pandemic, don't experience that, then we may well have a problem explaining to them that Freemasonry is an interpersonal activity. It's not something that you do online or through a game or whatever. So that could be a potential problem for us.
Brother Bob, just think do you need any volunteers to help?
Well, let me put it this way, Colin. Nearly everyone I know says I'm beyond help. But the answer is probably, but of course, because we're in lockdown, nobody can get in and out of the building except staff. So certainly not at the moment. But yeah, it's a kind thought.
I've got plenty of time on my hands at the moment, but never mind.
If there was a way, if there was a way of utilizing everybody, all the Masons that are stuck at home. Now, I'm thinking about this. I think there would be a way of making use of people who are looking for something to do for an hour or two every day, either transcribing some handwritten documents, just essentially keying them in I mean,
Yes.
I know it's probably very boring and not exactly the most rewarding thing in the world, but it would get a very important job done.
Isn't that what the apprentice is supposed to do, Bob?
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. I mean, isn't that he's supposed to learn from the master and basically do all these things? But if the master doesn't give the command, then the apprentice will not do anything, right? And it's sort of, in a way, that's the word.
Yeah. I'll think about that. I'm thinking about what they call the Galaxy Project, where I don't know if it's run by NASA or whatever, but you go on to a website and you get images of galaxies, and every galaxy has got a certain characteristic, so it's got a name, and so you say this is Galaxy A or this is Galaxy B, and eventually the idea is that all the galaxies in the universe will be catalogued. And so that's what people can do just sitting at home when they've got a spare half an hour or an hour. So, yeah.
When there was a back when there was a WPA project, the censuses up until 1920 were soundexed, and these were done by people that took the sound of a name that might be similar and put a certain code so that when you went to look for the microfilm, depending upon if it was Dierstein with a D or Tierstein with a TH, you would be able to somewhat locate it by various pieces of information. When the WPA was discontinued 72 years later, in 2002, the 1930 census was nothing but a enumeration district. So you had to know where the person lived, exactly, address. And that's when they got together with all the nerds that were then part of Ancestry.com, and they made a deal. And the deal was they would help index everything and get it digitized for better access at NARA. And that seems to be one of the best public-private partnerships that we've seen in a while. There's some that were trying to put the kibosh on this. Everybody's always freaked out about census records, but it's 72 years before they're released. So I'm looking forward to 1950 in a couple of years.
All that stuff is good. I mean, even things like, the problem we have as Masons is that we end up trying to do too much. We've got lots of great ideas, and we end up trying to do them all. And what happens is that the projects only inch forward instead of leaping forward. And I'm my own worst enemy in that. I might have 6 or 7 projects that are on the go right now, but I'm doing a little bit on each one, which means that in 7 years' time, they all appear all at once. Whereas at the moment, everybody thinks I'm a lazy so-and-so, and I'm not doing anything at all. So,
Bob, I'd like to lay out a small challenge with respect to archiving Outlook emails. So while we've been talking, I've gone back in my computer and I have a full archive of every work-related email and personal email I've sent since 2005. And they sit in one folder on my laptop. And I've used them many times to search through, right? You just drag them into Outlook, pop them open and do the search. I never ever thought about it as being preserving history, right? It was just my way of being a pack rat. Never throw anything out.
Sure, absolutely.
Well, I saved mine that way too.
Yeah.
But
So
I've got about 175,000 emails.
Yeah, I've got mine since 05, so 24.6 gigabytes of information.
It's a lot of data. A lot of data.
Unfortunately, in our lodge, during the monsoons, we had done what you guys had done in Scotland. We have a storage area downstairs. We kept all our stuff there, and the whole lodge got flooded, and the whole building got flooded, and all the documents got waterlogged and were lost. So that's one prime example of huge amounts of history being just wiped out. Even the paintings and the artworks that we talk about, the paintings have tears in them at some points, and we don't know who's painted them. We don't know who they are. There's so much abstractness to it that, even if there was something valuable there, just to find it, you'd have to spend a great deal of time with some very talented people to look at the details.
Richard, the same thing happened to the Grand Lodge of New York. The Hudson River flooded their archives at one point in time as well.
Yeah, that's why I think, digitization and use of new technology is an insurance policy against this thing happening, because physical records are always at risk. Electronic records, especially if they are stored in a variety of places, have got a much better chance of surviving. There we go.
The Latter-day Saints always had a vault that's impervious to nuclear attack, where they keep a set in case of the end of times. It's great.
That was one of the
I think you should have a membership for that. Everybody will send logs to that vault.
One of the things that was a big benefit to our organization is the proceedings would be sent out. For instance, New York would send Ontario, Ontario would send Michigan, we would send it to England and Scotland. And all of a sudden, if the archives did get destroyed of a particular Grand Lodge, there would be other copies in other Grand Lodges of your history, because of how we communicate as Grand Lodges. So some of that is actually, I know there's stuff that was flooded out in New York that Ontario has. I know there was stuff that was bombed out in World War II that is sitting in Ontario because they were sent to us. And it's a nice way if someone was cross-referencing some of that stuff. There would be a fairly complete archive as well, as not just from the Grand Lodges.
Yeah. Well, guys, I'm going to go. I'm going to go home and do what you normally do on a Friday night when you get home, I suppose. Find something to drink.
Yeah.
So I'll bid you adieu.
Whenever you have time, just a reminder. I've been authorized by you to remind you all the time about the dates. So I use this privilege. About this full document that we discussed yesterday.
Yeah, I think I know what's happened. Just while we're talking about that, I can't remember who it was, but they said that the bottom of the document has got the number 14 on it.
Yes,
and so
3 out of 14.
Yeah, that is my code for a third document of 14 on that subject. So it's
not a page.
No, it's not a page. No, unfortunately, sometimes us Scots aren't really very logical, and so that system was invented in my head, and I never thought anybody would actually think differently from me. But no, I think he's got the complete document. So it should start. I'm looking at it on the screen where I was. It's only 2 pages, and it's headed "The Essence of Scottish Freemasonry," and it ends with my name and a date.
Yeah, that's what we received.
That's the full document. The reason why it's so short was that it's become a bit noticeable that lots of Freemasons have got a fairly short attention spell. So putting a lot of information on 2 sides of 1 sheet of paper is usually not a bad rule of thumb. to keep people's attention. That's my
Okay, okay,
thinking,
understood.
if you
And
like.
okay, I'll inform everyone that this is the uncut version of it, or uncensored.
Yeah, I could I mean, to be fair, I could probably expand on it considerably, but that was just to make the point and make it as easily understandable as possible. That's why it's fairly
All
short.
right. Okay. Okay. Sure. Just making sure.
All right. So,
Have
what
a
was
great
that
weekend.
date you were going to remind me of?
On,
That
I will
date?
remind about the Thursday.
A
That's
week.
yeah, next
26th.
Thursday.
26th. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Then it comes in December, next one for Sapere. So
Right.
that's still far away. The Knights Templar in Scotland.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, 26th of November, the earliest Masonic rituals. That's the
Right.
one next
So
week.
so that's next week. Okay. Yeah, I've got a little bit of work to do between then and now. I'll do that. I'll manage. Okay. Well, good night,
okay.
everyone. Thanks very much
Bye-bye.
for
Bye-bye.
joining in. Bye-bye.
Thanks for your time. So we have brother Johnny, who says that he sometimes feels alone, very alone, when archiving and preserving the records of Grand Lodge of Oregon. So so you're not alone. Is he still with us?
I was going to tell him it's a very lonely job anyway. It's not not something, like spinning around on, boats and power boats and partying in some place while you're doing your, restoration. Very lonely job.
Not much to get help with.
Yeah, everybody says, "Oh, you oughta," and then they all disappear when they see how much work it is.
That's not the only case when you are archiving. In many cases, you see that.
Well, that's
the
when
end
I
of the day,
learned
you're
one
alone.
thing is, you know the joke. If you're standing there in line and they ask for volunteers, everybody else knows to take 2 steps backwards and leave you there in the front.
You can't blame the historian after about a year or two when he's suddenly on Xanax or something, he's having a nervous breakdown. And he's like the only guy sitting there. It'll be a problem. So I think teamwork is very important over here for this one. Yeah? Some people go with such gusto to do it, but they don't realize quite what they're getting into, and the quality that is acceptable, because if you don't give it that quality, then essentially it's just a waste.
I will just remind that
I
in the
did
public chat,
find
you had
a
the 2 documents, and please download them if you're interested. One came from brother Robert Kleeman, and the second one from Robert Cooper. Those are in chat. Sorry, I interrupted someone.
I was just gonna say one great program that I found. There's my lodge is all started out in Brooklyn or Kings County, and aside from Styles history, there's a paper called the Brooklyn Eagle, and I'm finding bits and pieces because all the lodges, all the commanderies, all the chapters advertised what was upcoming, or if they had a special gala or a picnic or something. And I find out more about deceased brethren through there than I do from our own archives at times.
I myself have done a lot of restoration with regards to the artwork. So a lot of artwork got damaged really badly, it's actually torn and there are actually holes in the paintings and all. So as I'm a photographer, I do a lot of restoration with regards to images. So anybody needs some help with that, please, by all means, you can always come to me for that.
Somebody's got a nice set of books over there.
That's David Waddington, Liverpool. Okay, when
David, I'm going to take your leave before you say that. And
okay.
prepared. Chalo, I'll catch you guys. Thank you, brethren. It was a lovely evening tonight. And I'll take
Okay, have a
everyone's
good
leave.
night. Have a good night. Have a
Take
good
care,
night.
Richard.
Good night, Bob.
Bye-bye, David. Bye-bye.
Okay,
Everybody.
bye-bye
Nice to
then.
see you. Nice to see you. Nice to see you, Colin.
Great.
It was a very good meeting. I don't know how we can help here from Chile, because there's a lot of information in Chile, and probably we're losing a lot of information in Chile. And that's quite interesting to know. Every time you travel, you see some rest of our masons. It's a terrific experience when you go out, go to Iquique, or you go to other cities in Santiago, Tal. It's fantastic to see the story there.
So you need to start archiving.
Yes,
You've been.
I take photographs and everything.
Yeah.
Yes, it's amazing.
It could matter tomorrow. Sometimes people don't look at the things in a proper way. So it could matter tomorrow. It may not be so important today. When we talk about this very old institution with its details, now we are trying to find every bits and pieces of everything. Who wrote it? Where why he signed it? Where did it send? And so on and so on. Every single little piece, helps us recover the picture of that very moment in history. So you never know what it might be in future. So it's better to leave good legacy for future generations, giving them a fuller picture.
Wider picture.
Video. That's what we've been doing for 8 months now. Okay, should I or could I propose to close the room? Unless anybody needs it open, I will start converting. Okay,
Okay. We finished with
Brother Tony, what you don't see, there are no links. It's about 2 files that have been shared in the public chat. Don't you see them?
No, I don't see them. The phone closed down. When it came back up, there's only about 4 messages on my chat.
Yeah, on well, Zoom does not provide the phone with that function to save the file, so you won't be.
No, it does not. It's a pain. I have to kind of work around when you make an attachment out there on the messages.
Okay, I will share these 2 files in the WhatsApp chat. You are part of the WhatsApp chat, right?
That is correct. Yes. Thanks, Brother David.
Yeah, okay, I will do that right away.
Okay.
Make sure you have the chance to download it somewhere else. Because through emails, it's sometimes a problem because of the size. I may send it, but you may not get it because there are some restrictions on different servers. So you don't necessarily, yeah.
No, I understand completely.
All right. With your kind permission, then I will end the meeting and drop the files in the WhatsApp chat. 2 files. Have a great rest of the day and night, and enjoy and have a great weekend as well. That's coming up.
David, take one.
We'll be seeing you on Sunday with brother DeBiase, Jean-Louis DeBiase. What is an initiatory order? So you might be interested in learning about that part. Okay.
Take one
If
Yeni
anyone
Rakia.
wants to save the file, yeah, please.
Take one Yeni Rakia.
What's that? Goodbye in Bulgarian.
No, it's a Turkish schnapps or Turkish brandy, doesn't matter.
Oh, rakia, take
Yeah,
rakia.
take-
Okay. Sure.
Okay.
Okay, bye-bye. Most
Bye.
probably I will be traveling
Safe
to
travels.
Georgia, so we'll see you on. Thank you. See you on Sunday. Bye-bye for now.
Have a safe drive.
Bye. Safe
Thank
drive.
you, Renan. Thank you.
Safe
Don't
And
driving.
my wife thanks you very much for the gifts you brought.
Hope she enjoys it. Yeah, hopes it.